The courtroom was already electric. A juror's credibility was in question. Kanye West appeared at the courthouse, and damning text messages were projected for all to see. Juror number 6 had originally told the court he lived in the Bronx, but later admitted he'd been staying in New Jersey with his fiancée and baby. These inconsistencies led the judge to question his honesty and consider dismissal, though, the defense argued, splitting time between states is common, and urged that he be retained. The decision was postponed until after the weekend. Amid all this, Kanye West, though, showed up. He didn't enter the main courtroom, but appeared in the overflow media room. He sat next to Diddy's son, Christian Combs, for about 20 minutes before leaving quietly. The jury likely never saw him. But the moment added another layer of celebrity to an already sensational trial. Then the big reveal. Text messages from Diddy and his inner circle appeared on the exhibit screens. One from November 2023 read, "Make sure Robin isn't doing anything dumb and paying rent on time." Prosecutors argued it was about control, not care. Diddy was paying rent to manipulate behavior, tying it to alleged sex trafficking. The jury sat in stunned silence, as this evidence added a chilling new dimension to the case. Next came Jonathan Perez, former personal assistant to Diddy from December 2021 to September 2024, now testifying under immunity. He explained the infamous King Nights adult gatherings in hotels or guest homes where he'd pack supplies like liquor, condoms, lube, lights, and arrange for drips for guests. He earned up to $100,000, but insisted these duties were only part of his job. Perez admitted buying Adderall, cocaine, Xanax, MDMA, and ketamine for Diddy using cash from security staff. Receipts and texts, like, "Pull $2,100 for a guy coming tonight," were used as evidence. He also confirmed packing pills neatly in Diddy's Gucci pouch. The defense portrayed these as personal choices, but prosecutors argued they showed systematic control and facilitation of illegal activities. Perez then described finding a private sex tape featuring Jane and another man, with Diddy in the background, on a shared staff iPad. He told senior staff, but no formal action followed. Defense claimed it was just a private moment, but were countered by prosecutors, who said it demonstrated a culture of secrecy and cover. Up. He continued by detailing how business and personal funds were mixed to fund these nights. He was often instructed to secure cash envelopes of $1,500, $3,500 for supplies, and to fill the rooms with everything from lights to honey. He emphasized that these were personal events, but prosecutors insisted it was part of a broader pattern of exploitation. Perez also recounted a late-night confrontation between Diddy and Jane during a FaceTime call in June 2024. Jane had accused him of jealousy over another woman, prompting an angry response. Texts confirmed, "PD and guests are fighting. I'm about to pick him up," while the defense noted Jane returned home calmly. Prosecutors emphasized Diddy's emotional control over her. Then came the LA raid. Homeland Security Agent Andre Lamont described finding contraband at Diddy's mansion. 6 manila envelopes, labeled K, testing positive for ketamine, plus baby oil, Vaseline, and Astroglide in the bedroom. A closet safe held passports, cash, and bagged MDMA in a locked security room. They found a bolt-action Ruger, an AR-15 with no serial number, a Glock, magazines including a 60-round drum, and a locked firearms safe. Defense claims all were secure and for protection, but the prosecution argued together. They painted a picture of systematic preparedness for illicit activity. On cross, the defense questioned custody of the weapons. No photos of open or locked status. Unclear documentation. Unclear chain of custody. They stressed that baby oil and Astroglide could have innocent personal uses, and that firearms might simply have been part of professional security protocol. Prosecutors responded that, while each item on its own could be benign, together they fit the pattern of exploitation and control. Perez was allowed to testify that he still felt loyalty to Diddy. Moment the defense emphasized to show his statements weren't motivated by malice. Prosecutors used it to argue that he was a credible witness, laying out what he saw, not seeking revenge. The court also admitted screenshots from Christina Cororum, Diddy's former chief of staff, that documented hotel arrangements and payment. The judge deemed relevant. Discussion over Gina, the third alleged victim, created legal tension. Her name came up in testimony, but she hadn't taken the stand, and her status as a trafficking victim hadn't been confirmed. The judge limited references for now, but her name continues to hang over the proceedings. The juror crisis remains unresolved. If dismissed, an alternate replaces him, but it raises questions about fairness and diversity. The judge's upcoming decision could affect the trial's pace and outcome. But for now, everything moves forward. Next to take the stand is Brendan Paul, a former TSA agent with immunity. Prosecutors say he'll reveal logistics behind drug shipments, supply chains, flights, and hotel coordination tied to Diddy's staff. His testimony could confirm coded systems and clandestine routes used in these operations. Behind the scenes, the courtroom buzzes with preparation charts detailing flight logs, hotel stays, and cash flows are being set up. The prosecution aims to visually tie all these events together. Meanwhile, off-duty celebrities and entertainment figures gather discreetly behind cap-rimmed doors to watch. A social media storm is building, with hashtags for justice and calls for facts. This verdict won't just affect Diddy, it may shape how power, money, and secrecy are pursued in America's courtrooms. The next phase promises more dramatic testimony, more revelations, and more public attention. The jury will soon be tasked with deciding whether these acts show consensual behavior or a criminal enterprise of control and trafficking. The courtroom was packed the next morning as anticipation crackled in the air. Everyone knew the key moment was coming. Brendan Paul, the former TSA agent turned star witness, was about to testify under immunity. Rumors swirled that he held the missing piece. Proof of how flights, cash, drugs, and secret events were woven together in a web led by Diddy's inner circle. Court officials unveiled new exhibits, sleek charts mapping flight logs, hotel invoices, cash disbursements, and communication threads. As the jury filtered in, the visuals told a story no one could ignore: a pathway from private jets to private rooms, all pointing toward coordinated activity. Brendan Paul took the stand. His voice was calm, measured. He described how he handled confidential shipments, verified names on logs, and observed large numbers of unlabeled, sealed packages loaded onto aircraft. His testimony connected all the dots: cash warehoused, coded messages exchanged, and multiple staff members involved at each step. He spoke of unexpected tasks, documents filled out under false names, late-night pickups at airports, and hotels booked in the names of assistants, not Diddy himself. He described Diddy's demand for discretional guest lists, no official invoices, and no paper trails. Paul detailed dealings with unknown intermediaries, clients referred to only by initials or code names. Paul testified to seeing personalized kits in guest rooms complete with curated supplies, drugs, personal comfort items, and bottles labeled for scheduled delivery. He personally witnessed staff coordinating logistics for drips post-event, flights synced to hotel schedules, and personnel stationed to clean up after hours. The defense sprang into action. They challenged Paul's credibility, pointing out gaps in his documentation, questioning his memory of dates, and suggesting he'd been motivated by his immunity deal. They highlighted inconsistencies. Was a bag full of herbal supplements or illicit substances? Was a hotel room set up for relaxation or organized trafficking? But Paul stood firm. Certain events stayed in his mind: the moment when Diddy ordered packages redirected, the phone call instructing secrecy, the overnight booking of an entire hotel block labeled as personal request for someone he called Miss J. He admitted to once asking, "Why are we doing this still?" The answer he got back was blunt: "This is how it needs to run." Next, the court returned to Christina Cororum's screenshots. Prosecutors asked Paul, "Do you see these systems reflected in your work?" He nodded, confirming her logs mirrored the patterns he executed. The jurors leaned forward, realizing the circle of code and secrecy had re-whirled enforcers. People like Paul. A hush fell as the judge instructed the jury to remain objective. Outside, cameras clicked. Journalists scribbled. Social media exploded with shock. This wasn't just allegations anymore. It was orchestrated operations, narrated by someone who had lived them. As midday approached, corrections were made. The prosecution clarified certain entries. The defense requested redactions, but the visuals remained stark. Hotel rooms labeled, hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing, flights untraceable. The question facing the jury: was this merely personal indulgence, or a system engineered to cover up trafficking? With Paul's testimony complete, the jury filed out for lunch, leaving the court buzzing with questions. What comes next? Will Gina testify? Will the juror issue resurface? For now, one thing was certain: the case had been shaped by insiders, and now it was up to them to decide what it meant under the law. The courtroom lights dimmed as Brendan Paul stepped down, leaving behind a room charged with unspoken questions. The next logical phase was clear: resolve the juror dilemma, decide whether Gina would testify, and determine if Christina Cororum's records held enough weight for further scrutiny. Late afternoon, Juror No. 6 update. A hush fell as the judge returned after the weekend. Eyes fixed on Juror No. 6. He reviewed his inconsistent statements, claiming Bronx residency earlier, then admitting he'd been staying in New Jersey with his fiancée and baby. The judge spoke quietly but firmly. Credibility matters. Inconsistent answers, regardless of intent, could compromise the jury's fairness. He excused Juror No. 6, calling up an alternate. Murmurs spread, but the jury's diversity and integrity remained intact. Next witness. A surprise twist. With Brendan's testimony recorded, attention shifted to what would come next. Gina, the third alleged victim, remained uncalled. Court watched closely to see if prosecutors would bring her forward or rely solely on other accounts. At the same time, Diddy's team filed emergency motions to exclude remaining evidence tied to Christina Cororum, arguing it was prejudicial and speculative. Outside the courthouse, a media storm, news cameras assembled by the steps as reporters pounced on the jurors' dismissal, terms like credibility and fair trial trending across social platforms. Legal analysts debated whether removing a juror over residency was common or excessive. Then, whispers circulated that Gina might testify next week, sending courtroom coverage into overdrive. Late evening headlines by nightfall. The headlines were unambiguous. Juror dismissed. Credibility a key concern. Brendan Paul's logistics exposed. Deep structure. Gina may testify. Next court transcript signal online. Debate raged. Was this case about consensual behavior or a criminal enterprise cloaked in fame? Social media divided. Some called it systemic abuse. Others cried defamation. Turning point. Approaching the courtroom cleared by the end of the day, but its atmosphere was irrevocably changed. With one juror gone and another possible key witness, Gina, still pending, the next sessions would bring clarity. Brendan Paul's first-hand account had mapped out logistics, money, and secrets. Now the jury had to decide, was it a private celebrity life or a criminal operation hidden in plain sight? This case is no longer a story just about Diddy. It's about power, control, and the blurred lines between fame and accountability. And as everyone prepares for tomorrow, the jury and the world are bracing for what comes next. As the courtroom slowly cleared and the day's intensity began to settle, it became obvious that this case was moving toward a critical climax. Every hour brought more twists, emotional testimonies, conflicting memories, and disturbing evidence that kept everyone, especially the jury, on edge. What seemed at first like just another celebrity trial had morphed into a deep dive into hidden abuse, manipulation, and the potential misuse of power inside a sprawling entertainment empire. The introduction of weapons, large sums of money, and detailed accounts of king knights painted a disturbing picture. Testimonies revealed a system where drugs, sex, and fear might have been tools of control rather than simple vices. Witnesses like Jonathan Perez, though loyal, added pieces to a larger puzzle of exploitation through text messages, videos, and first-hand stories. The court saw glimpses of a life shrouded in secrecy, but powered by privilege. Yet, for all the prosecution's progress, the defense struck back, raising doubts about motivation, consent, and reliability. They questioned the context, the credibility of the accusers, and the interpretation of events. They argued this was a story of adults making personal choices, not victims trapped in a criminal enterprise. Their goal, to break the image of a calculated predator and instead paint a picture of misunderstood excess. But beyond the courtroom tactics and headlines, one truth remains clear: this is more than just a legal battle. It's about what happens when fame meets unchecked authority. The jury, burdened with this massive responsibility, must now decide whether this was an empire of entertainment or exploitation. Their verdict won't just decide guilt or innocence. It may determine the fate of a legacy. And with more witnesses expected, including key figures who might yet shift the entire narrative, the final chapters of this trial promise to be as explosive as the opening ones. The world is watching.